Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad Podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nuggets to help you on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the Fatherhood Authority, Kenneth Braswell.
Welcome to I Am Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth Braswell. Thank you for joining us on another episode here in our fourth season. We are still cranking along, and you guys are actually listening to me. I've been asking people to subscribe, because when you subscribe, you help our algorithms and you help more people to hear the conversations that we're having each and every week on responsible fatherhood, marriage, relationships, all of that good stuff, parenting, anything that impacts all of that stuff, anything that influences all of that stuff. We try to have and bring the most diverse and influential voices from around the country to have these conversations, and that is no different today. We are honored to welcome a leader in relationship education and family empowerment, Joneen Mackenzie. As the founder of the Center for Relationship Education and the lead author of the nationally acclaimed Real Essentials curriculum, Joneen has dedicated her career to equipping individuals, families, and educators with the skills needed to build strong, healthy relationships. A former first lieutenant in the United States Air Force Nurse Corps, Joneen has seamlessly blended her medical background with her passion for relational well-being, co-parenting, or co-authoring the book Relationship Essentials with her daughter, Lauren. She is also a founding board member of the National Alliance for Relationship and Marriage Education, NARME, ASCEND, and the Medical Institute, and she currently serves as the president of NARME. We'll be talking a little bit about that today. Additionally, her involvement with the Harvard Human Flourishing Study Community of Practice Consortium highlights her commitment to providing and promoting our work around thriving families and communities. As a mother of 4 and grandmother of 8, Joneen brings not just academic experience, but also personal experience to the conversation on parenting, fatherhood, and family dynamics. Today, we're going to dive into her incredible work, the impact of relationship education, and how strong relationships lay the foundation for thriving families and communities. We're going to bring her to the stage right now. Joneen, how are you today?
I am well, very good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about, so let's just dive into it. So we start our podcast off very interestingly, so that it sets the stage always for our core content. And we love for our guests to tell their daddy story. Tell us your daddy story.
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, with first generation Italian parents, and I had a wonderful support system with my grandparents being close by. And my dad was not a dad that would be written up in the history books as being a great dad. Okay, he didn't have the skills to be a good dad. He was a hard worker. He was kind of rough around the edges, angered easily, and was sometimes, not with me so much, but with my brothers, was very harsh in his punishment. And he was harsh with my mom. There was some domestic violence going on. And so my thought of fatherhood was, tempered only by my wonderful grandfather, who was a gentleman, who was a mentor, who was sacrificial in his love for his grandchildren, especially me. I felt very set apart by him. And I think all the grandkids did, but he made us feel so special. And I think that's what gave me my strength. I wanted to marry somebody like my grandpa.
Wow. That's a beautiful thing to hear. My daughters, at least one of them, said that to me. And every time when I heard her say it, I'm actually writing a book now, Joneen, called Too Seasoned to Care. It's a book on aging and how, as you get older or more seasoned, which is the term I'm using, you have a little more clarity on life, a little more focus on what's important, how you want to engage. And when she said that to me, my mind was, wow, I didn't want you to set the bar so high so that you do not see potential in the frog. And so I told her the story of how her mother and I met, and the core message in that relationship was that your mother was able to see the prince in the frog because I didn't show up as a prince. And so there's a process in this, which we're going to get to with respect to relationship and how you walk into that. But before we do that, I want to connect the story that you just told us to where you are now, because the second thing I'm always curious about, folks who do the work that we do, is how we get here. Because a lot of people ask the question, well, how do you get to that position? How did you do that work? And they're looking for an academic pathway to get there. And I often tell them my academic pathway was life. It wasn't in the classroom. It was how God orchestrated my life in a very unique manner that ended me where I am today. Talk about your journey from that story that you just gave about your father and your grandfather to where you are today and why this work is important to you.
Well, my parents eventually divorced, and then all of us at the same time, which is very typical, New Yorkers moved to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And my family moved all at the same time. My grandparents helped my mom buy a house. So I was very close to, on the way home from school, I would go by my grandparents' house, and my mom was working, so I would stay there. And through high school, I was, always very energetic. I was the mascot of my high school, which, high school spirit, high passion. And I went to nursing school. I went to the University of Texas, and then I joined the military. And I just felt like I was on a mission. When you're in the military, it's not just like you're working for a company. You become a patriot. You become rah rah USA. You know that they made us feel that we were, if we were not there, that the puzzle piece was missing, and it wasn't you were part of the whole. And I felt really important, really purposeful. And then I met my husband in the military, got married, moved to Colorado because he was doing a residency there, and started having children. And I had 4 children in 6 years. And but I was an ICU nurse. I was very involved I was on my way to medical school. I mean, there was so much going on. And then my children slowed me down, and I realized now this is my purpose. My purpose is to not raise children. I was raising kingdom builders. I didn't want them to go to Harvard. I wanted them to go to heaven.
Right.
Okay. And so I put all my energy in raising my kids. And I was a stay-at-home mom. I was lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mom. I got very involved in my community. I was PTA president. My 7th grade son came home with a permission slip to learn about his body in science class. And I thought, you're supposed to learn about your body in science class. Why am I getting a permission slip? And so I went to go look at what he was learning. And it was a sex ed curriculum, and it was body parts, and then it was condoms and contraception, which I'm okay with. Okay, fine. It's information. Information is power. But they were missing a piece. How do you get from body parts to condoms?
Right.
Right? So I was teaching Red Cross babysitting. I was teaching first aid. I was teaching CPR. I was teaching an etiquette class with the high tea at the Brown Palace Hotel as the culminating activity. And I brought all these kids together with the permission of their parents. And I said, what do you guys want to know about sex? And they almost swallowed their tongue because no one ever asks kids, what do you want to know? We always assume they want to know certain things. And here was the first question. And this was in 1991. They said, does anybody ever stay together anymore?
Wow.
And it broke my heart, given my history of a broken family, and I thought and then the questions started coming, and they were deep heart questions. They weren't head questions. How do you stay with somebody for a lifetime? How do you know when you're in love? How do you date? How do you find a life partner? How do you keep it spicy and interesting? And I thought, these are great questions.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody asked about positions. Nobody asked about satisfying sex. Nobody asked about orgasms. Nobody asked about that. They asked about relationships. And so this is in 1991. I don't have Google. There's no Google. And I'm going from library to bookstore, looking for answers to answer these children, these teenagers. And I was getting frustrated. And somebody said to me, have you tried the University of Denver? They have a repository of research on relationship development. I said, wait a minute, there's research about this? Are you serious? Because the way I did relationships was, hi, I think you're cute. I like your car. I think your mother likes me. That's how I did relationships. No skills at all. No skills that were modeled for me. No skills. And so I partnered with the University of Denver. I hung around until they answered my questions. I was really kind of a pest. And I realized that I needed 5 skills for friendship. Let's start with friendship, right? And they gave me the skills. I put those skills into fun activities because that's how I learn, and movement and, similes and metaphors and all that. And I went back to the school and asked them if I could teach. And they kind of had to let me do that because I had raised a ton of money for the school.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew I was a person of faith, and they were afraid I was going to do the Jesus thing. But I didn't, because you don't have to.
Right.
This is common sense. This is the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
And the long and the short of it was, the kids loved it. The adults loved it. The parents came in. The school wanted more. They did a cover story on it in the newspaper. And within a year, I was in 40 schools. And I was wearing myself out. I said, I have to formalize this. I've hit a nerve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the called life that you're talking about. This wasn't academic, it was life.
Mm-hmm.
And I took out a loan, and I called in the experts and the curriculum writers and the pedagogy specialists and the graphic artists, and a curricula was created, and the rest is history. Now we have 7 curricula for all stages of relationship, including relationships in the workplace, because CEOs know that people leave their job not because they don't like their job, they don't like the people they work with, and sometimes workplaces are toxic, and it costs the CEO a lot of money to lose a valued employee. So we also do relationships in the workplace, but we try to reduce divorce. We try to do the preparation on the front end with engaged couples. We work with married couples. We have the marriage grant from the federal government. We've had it for 20 years from the beginning. And now we work with, and I started the Center for Relationship Education to house the curriculum and to be able to write for grants and foundation money and all of that. And we have a combination of grants and foundations and paying customers. But over the course of running it for 20 plus 30 years, my husband had retired and was waiting for me to travel. I was working 12 to 16-hour days like you can. You talk about you have so much to give. And I did a succession plan with my daughter back in October of 2023 and been traveling ever since.
Yeah, I think, one of the challenges as I'm listening to you is, and I want to hear what you have to say about this, this thing, relationship, marriage, all of this stuff is so embedded in life. And I think that we continue to try to structuralize it within systems, right? And right now, in the space that you and I kind of hover around, the federal government, right? And so the question is, can it be harnessed? Can it be orchestrated? Meaning educating our children about relationship and marriage. Should that be happening in the home as a core um, raising tool, as opposed to in the schools, or does everybody have a responsibility for that?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that I love to do the community saturation approach,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that um, the school has a job to do, the parents have a job to do, the community has a job to do, the church has a job to do, the Boys and Girls Club has a job to do, and we all need to be on the same page
Mm-hmm.
because repetition is the lifeblood of learning. How many times we tell our kids, say please and thank you,
Right.
brush your teeth, make your bed, be an eagle, don't be a duck. Okay, expect excellence. Here's a boundary. All of those things are important to repeat. Okay, so that you raise up an adult, not a child.
Right. Yeah, I love that approach. I love that conversation. And I think that part of our challenge, you do, and I want to talk about your role now with NARME and NARME in and of itself, having entities that are able to have this conversation in a rational, intentional way, right? And so that we are equipping our children where those community assets may or may not be succeeding, right? Because what we're trying to do is fill in the gaps. Because I was going to ask you the question, who's failing? But I'm not going to answer that question because everybody's failing a little bit in all of those areas, right? And so we can pass blame on who's not teaching their children their part of the equation, right? And so, but when you look at organizing this conversation and structuralizing this conversation, how does NARME play a role in doing that? Because you've been doing this for years. NARME has been doing a great job. Others out there have created entities to also do this work. And it just seems like it never catches hold. Like there's these ebbs and flows. Like it's really moving at some point and then it disappears. And then it's holding on and then it disappears. Talk about how you and NARME have begun to really, how you've always thought about structuralizing this conversation and keeping it at the forefront of the conversation, right? And how important it is for us to do that and to support that kind of work.
Well, what happened, after I did the handoff to my daughter, I just have all this energy, I have all this passion. I don't know. I need and was one of the founding members of NARME back, 15, 20 years ago. And all of us who were on the board were also running their own agencies. And when I did the succession plan, they asked me to be the overseer, to be the president of NARME. And what NARME it stands for is the National Alliance for Relationship and Marriage Education. Now, why would you need an organization like that? Because there's so much data, there's so much research on the human flourishing, from Harvard to human development experts to marriage and family therapists who want to increase happiness and human flourishing. And I don't know if your audience knows about the longest longitudinal study ever done, 75 years. A 75-year study, longest study ever done. And it's on happiness. And there's a YouTube video, it's called the Harvard Happiness Study, and it's fascinating. They studied teenagers all the way until their 90s. And they did brain scans and they checked and they asked questions about their relationships. And the conclusion of that study was the biggest predictor of happiness is the quality of your relationships.
Right.
Right. And isn't that what we all want?
Mm-hmm.
We all want to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that relationships excuse me, are incredibly important to happiness, to wealth, to human flourishing. And so I wanted to have a place, along with my colleagues, to disseminate this data to politicians, to uh, to influencers, to people who can take it and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what NARME is. NARME is an alliance of organizations that are doing dad work or doing mom work or doing parenting or doing marriage or doing relationships in the workplace or doing human flourishing or doing poverty prevention, and they all come to the conference. And we have a conference every year. This year it's going to be in Washington, D.C., July 24th to the 27th. We have, I know that you've been to a NARME conference several times, and we have people like Ian Rowe and Brad Wilcox and Dr. Scott Stanley and Gottman and all the people that have done this work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we disseminate the research to practitioners, to those in the field. We want best practices to ensue, but even more importantly, since I've taken the reins of NARME, my focus is on public policy.
Mm.
And you said it doesn't take hold. Here's why it doesn't take hold: because the government doesn't support it. When you see how little, how the small amount of money that goes into marriage strengthening and fatherhood, it's shocking. It's almost insulting.
Right.
Given the fact that the Department of Education last year got $80 billion, and the money has been going up while the outcomes have coming down.
Mm-hmm.
I want your audience to know, since the 70s, marriage is down by 65%.
Right.
Cohabitation is up by 700%.
Mm-hmm.
People don't value committed relationships.
Right.
And if there's some trouble, if in paradise, if there's some thing that they're out, it's disposable. And it doesn't matter if children get hurt. Now, of course, there's reasons for divorce that not every marriage should stay together. But the disposability of marriage and family is shocking.
Yeah, the key word you said in there, which is the word I always use, is committed, right? It is the commitment, right? You make a commitment in a relationship to be in that relationship, to take care of your children, to raise your children in a healthy environment. One of the things, Joneen, I've been talking about lately, I'm kind of building this whole conversation around it and actually looking to apply for one of the healthy relationship grants this time to kind of flush this theory out, because I really believe that it's a solution. It's not the solution. And so this whole notion, I think the bridge between the fatherhood work and the marriage work is co-parenting work, right? And so for me, as we are successful in doing the fatherhood work, one of the things I get at each graduation, Joni, without fail, is a bunch of people, particularly moms and women, who come up to me after and say, Mr. Braswell, what do you have for us? And my mind is always, wait a minute, what do you mean, what do I have for you? I'm trying to build the capacity of your father of your children. That's what I have for you. But then when I began thinking about it, it's like, no, they're asking, how can you help us and assist us in this co-parenting journey, right? Because in my mind, as we talk about marriage, we often talk about marriage in the context of being the solution for healthy child well-being. According to the research, one can surmise absolutely, because when you look at the data as it relates to marriage, yeah, it bears that out. But we're forgetting a critical component of that, and that is the journey to getting married, which includes the buy-in to commitment. You just can't, if we could just flip a wand and say at 18, everybody's going to be married, that's not going to do anything for child well-being. the work that you and I are trying to do is how do we create a pathway and a journey to which people go through the same mechanisms you and I walk to, right? The courting, like I like, passing a note. Do you like me? Yes, no, maybe. At school, socializing, getting to know people, understanding families, understanding community, all of that kind of stuff that doesn't happen because we're trying to fast track it, right? And how do we slow it down so we're not fast tracking the work? And in this work, my mind is in the co-parenting space. Because if I can get to you when the child is born, because the research says that 85% of low-income families particularly are still romantically involved at the birth of the child, that's an opportunity point. You want to begin to start talking, training, teaching them, and informing them while they're still in the romantic stage, right? So that by the time, 5 years roll around, when the research says that there's a significant difference between the interaction between a married dad and a non-married dad, that may have an impact on relationship, but it never should have a impact on the co-parenting responsibility. They still should be able to walk away with the commitment to co-parenting. So I think the two things have to happen at the same time: the commitment to co-parenting and the commitment to relationship at the same time. And that's a theory that I want to work out and see what that looks like. When you're doing the marriage and relationship stuff, how often do you see an intersection where we're emphasizing co-parenting, or are we just looking at the relationship between mom and dad, or man and woman, or however you want to phrase it?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question because not in most recently, a couple of years prior, maybe 3 or 4 years before I passed the Center for Relationship Education to my daughter, we had a TANF contract, TANF being temporary assistance to needy families. And if we know the 4 goals of TANF, one of them is to assist children, to serve children and families so they can stay in their own home. The second one is to reduce non-marital childbearing. The third is job preparation, work, and marriage education. And the fourth one is increasing the number of healthy 2-parent families. And TANF is not being used in that capacity in many places. It's just being used for public assistance and job prep.
Right.
Okay, so this particular county that in Colorado was very forward thinking, and they gave us a TANF contract. And after years of having the TANF contract and working, and they were seeing what we were doing, and they were loving what we were doing, they came to us and said, "Can you develop us a motherhood program?" And I said, "What? Why? Why?" Well, because we're having a fatherhood program over here, and the dads are getting camaraderie, and they're getting skills, and they're getting travel vouchers and Walmart gift cards and all kinds of, stuff. And moms are not getting anything, and moms are noticing, and they want a motherhood program. And so I said, okay, well, let's look and see what's already out on the market. And every motherhood program that we saw that was out on the market was child-centric.
Right.
And when we met with the moms, the end user, the TANF eligible moms, they were not parented well. Their daddy story was not healthy. Okay. And so that's what they were modeled. Very little skills. And we said, let's not be child-centric here. Let's be mom-centric. Let's talk to their heart. Let's teach them the skills. And included in that is their relationship with dad, even if they were not together and married. Okay. And the implications of this lesson for you, the implications of this lesson for your baby daddy. Okay. And the implications of this lesson for your child.
Right.
And at first, it took a long time to develop because we do focus groups. It took a long time. And once it was developed and beta tested and all that, we started implementing it. And they wanted to mandate that moms came. And I said, who are TANF eligible? No, we're not mandating anything. We're going to love them into this class. Okay, through certain things. Lunchtime, giving them a great lunch, whatever. And it became so popular and so incredible waiting lists were happening. And so they started seeing increase in child support. They started seeing increase in dad's, positive interactions with the children. Because mom is the gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an angry mom who's mad that now dad has a new girlfriend, they're not going to co-parent well.
Right.
They've got to get over that. It's heart issues. It's allowing dad in a safe space to be with their child, to co-parent, to really do it together, independent of all those variables. Okay, because let's focus on the child here. Let's be the adult in the room and focus on the child. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen very because there's so much woundedness and so much trauma. Right. So anyway, we've seen because through this program we've seen increased academic achievement of a child because now they are being parented well. Okay, dad is in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, mom and dad are working together, even if they're not married. They're working together to set those boundaries and expectations with the child. They're together on the consequences of behavioral issues. All of those things, that consistency, that predictability that children need, mom and dad are now working together because we've taught them how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not natural to get through your anger and to get through all your trauma, even if you know what's good for your kid.
Absolutely.
Right. So you have to do that work one-on-one to love on a mom, to love on a dad, to give them the skills, to give them the opportunities to do this together. And we have seen through this work sometimes they even get together and marry.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Right.
that is the goal. I mean, not always, because sometimes it's dangerous. Sometimes there's already too many people involved and it's too convoluted. But if there is an opportunity to get them together, and you should see these weddings and you should see the kids participate. They are so happy mom and dad are committing to one another in a public way. Right.
Yeah.
And this is independent of a faith walk. I mean, I know that NARME is a non-sectarian organization, and a lot of people think marriage is just a religious institution. No, it's a social construct.
Yes.
That if it's done well, and people don't like marriage like people don't like tennis. Nobody's going to like tennis if you don't do it well. I suck at tennis, so I'm not going to play. Well, I suck at relationships, so I'm going to go from partner to partner to partner to partner. Let's get them not to suck.
Right.
Let's get them skilled. And
Right.
then they will like it. Because when you're successful at something, you start liking it.
Yeah. This, what you're describing, it doesn't sound like rocket science.
It's not
But why
rocket
is it so
science.
hard for us to get our hands around it and to convince people that it's important?
Because it's an issue of the heart. And first of all, nobody wants the government in their marriage. Nobody wants somebody on the outside in their heart space. They feel like they have that independence. And we want to maintain that. You have control over what you do. Nobody's telling you what to do. But we're just imparting the data. So let's impart the data of what makes a person successful financially, emotionally, physically, and happy. What makes that happen? We're just going to share that with you. And if you, on your own volition, that's why we don't mandate anything, you want to come to these classes, we will love on you. We will embrace you. We will give you a lunch. We will do a date night. We will help you. Okay. A lot of some of the I don't know if you ever read Kathy Eaton's book, Promises I Can Keep.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, her research was her premise was African American women don't like marriage. But then when she started interviewing African American women, they thought it was so high in their mind, like having $1 million house. It was
Right.
not within their reach.
Right.
They actually honored it so much that they said, I don't have the skills. I don't know anybody who's married. My grandma's not married. My mother's not married. This is the social norm that I've lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something for white people or something. I don't know. And this is what it says in the book. And she was interviewing these women. And guess what? The phrase over and over again, it's not within our reach.
Right.
So guess what Scott Stanley named his marriage program? Within my reach.
Right.
Let's break it down into nuggets, like being an entrepreneur, like being successful in a business, like being successful in relationships, like being successful in your community, like the success sequence,
Mm-hmm.
right? When I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York, guess what they would do? Double Dutch.
Right.
And guess what they would sing it to? First, Dick and Jane sitting in a tree,
Right.
Kissing. First comes love,
Come
then
married.
comes marriage, then comes baby in the baby carriage.
Right.
Will you go into any second grade inner city school and ask them to repeat that jingle? They don't know it.
Mm.
So we need to bring back the jingle. You know why? Because the success sequence has been studied. If you graduate from high school, college is a bonus. If you get a job, get a skill in a job, a full-time job, and if you marry before having children, less than 10% of people in poverty, if you do it that way, less than 10% of you will be in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
It's the breaking the poverty cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So every child needs to know the success sequence.
Yeah,
And
I
we need
think
to
one of the
bring.
challenges though is getting them to. So when you're talking about the parents, let's talk about the participants for a second here, because what you're describing is absolutely true, but it's the principle of it and how do you obtain that, which is a struggle for participants, because the number one question in their minds is, if I do not achieve any level of the sequence, am I a failure? Because we started earlier with no one wants to fail at anything. And so if you're telling them that this is the success sequence, and if they don't do it this way, their outcomes are not going to be as well. In their minds, they're thinking to themselves, then if I don't succeed, I fail. And how do you construct that principle so that people understand what we started out our conversation with, life be lifing,
Mhm.
right? And nothing comes easy. Hardship is a part of life. Struggle is a part of life. Faith is what keeps you moving. And so when you talk about faith as a construct, faith is necessary. It's part of this conversation that we should be having, not in the religious space of it, but what do you believe in? What do you
Mhm.
believe in yourself? What do you believe for your children? What do you believe for your success? And how do you ride that belief no matter what is happening in your life? That, my dear, is faith. That is how you get to where you're trying to get to. And so when you're looking around the country, because we talked about this and I want you to speak to this, when you look at the investment into this work, right? The question that I have for a participant is that young man and young woman who's in an area of the country who does not have access to you and I, or people who look like you and I, or people who do what you and I do. What's their pathway to support? Because the support of it in its totality across the country is so small that there are huge areas of our communities that understand what we're talking about, but they don't know how to walk that out in principle because there's nothing available for them to show them how to do it.
Right. And that's what there's different cities across the country. Right now, it's Jacksonville, Florida, and San Antonio, Texas, and some other areas. They're doing this community marriage project,
Mm-hmm.
and they are getting all the players that do anything with relationship work and marriage work and they're putting them on the same page, and they're putting it on the website, and they're letting people know, and they're doing radio spots, and they're doing TV spots, and they're doing social media to say, you need help, you need skills, you need this, we're going to give it to you. And we're going to give it to you for free. We're going to give it to you at a nominal fee, whatever it is. And that's what we need to do. We need to amalgamate all that energy, get people on the same page, put it on a website. Here are all the offerings in your community. Here's the bus route. Here's how to get there. Okay. And some of them are even going to these people. They're going to their employers and having lunch and learns. They're going to barbershops. They're going to bars. They're going to the people rather than the people coming to them. Because the goal is to disseminate this information that we know, but a lot of people don't know.
Right.
And when you know better, you do better.
Absolutely.
Right. So all of that being said is that we must be able to disseminate all of these services and all of these things in a way that is in bite-sized pieces. And again, do you know the science of hope? You talk about faith. One of the things I went to a child development event, and the professor said, hold on a second. The professor said that what is one thing you could give people that if they didn't have, they would feel like a failure. They would, get depressed. They would retreat from everything. What is the one thing that you can give somebody?
Would be hope. Absolutely.
You nailed it. We are all sitting there, all of us very learned people from around the country. And we're like, what is it? Is it love? Is it a family? Is it a marriage? Is it a dad? Is it a mom? What is it? It's hope. Okay. And when people lose hope, that's when they feel like a failure. And so we don't have to have people follow a script, but there is a life script that makes life easier.
Right.
Wouldn't you agree that there's a life script? If you're bucking the life script of going to school and dressing well and taking a shower and brushing your teeth and presenting yourself well, if you don't do that, life becomes harder.
Yeah. Yes.
And if you don't have a life script,
right.
Oh my goodness, life becomes harder. It's not that you're a failure. We want to reduce the barriers, not bring them up.
Right. And you could do those things when you're young, when you have all the time in the world, because when you get more seasoned like us, you start racing against the time. And now you got to deal with all these things that you didn't deal with when you had all the time in the world to deal with them.
Right. And the same thing, this is what I tell parents of teenagers. They come to me and they go, "Oh, my teenager, they're crazy. Their brain." Well, that's the nature of teenagers. Their brain's not done. Okay, their prefrontal cortex is all built. Their building block. It's 2 times when they're a toddler and when they're a teenager. And so we go through that whole thing. But I always tell parents, teach your children these principles in bite-sized pieces when they're little. When they're preschoolers.
Right.
Okay. Do it in rhymes, do it in song, do it in games, do it in play. And then when they're teenagers and they get a little crazy, they will never forget it because they'll be easier. They'll have a life script.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome. Listen, Joneen, this has been you and I'm gonna have to bring you back because we got a whole lot of conversation that we can have. I will definitely, depending on what I was gonna talk to you a little bit about strategies and what we should be thinking about in this new societal space that we're in now. For us, we've ridden this wave through administrations. It shifts, ebbs and flows depending on who is in there. But this space that we're in, responsible fatherhood space and the relationship and marriage space has been consistent. We've been here. We move and we flow a little bit, but the work has still been consistent. To your point, it can be supported more, so that we can do more, so that we can impact more. And it's so necessary. And I think that this is one of those times where we really need to be intentional about unifying the voice completely around family stability. What does that look like? We have core components of what that looks like, but the conversation around family stability and what it takes to get young people into stable relationships so that they can have hope about what their futures are going to look like from the perspective of family and community. What does that look like? Right. And so they're not asking questions, to your point earlier, about positions and, and should I take this? And they want to know, our little girls want to know, Daddy, am I going to find a husband? Right. Our boys want to know, Dad, what does the right girl look like for me? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we need to start talking about. That we need to, when one of the things that they used to do in high school is set goals for, what are your goals?
Mm,
And marriage and family was always a goal.
right.
It's not anymore.
Right.
It's not even in the lexicon because schools have beat it out of kids. I don't want to blame schools, but it's just like they're not talking about marriage and family. In fact, in some schools, you're not allowed to talk about marriage because so many people are not married.
Right.
Hold on one. And hold on a second.
Yeah.
Basically,
Go ahead. We're good. I can hear.
can you hear that? Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. We're good.
Basically, we had one of the, I actually did a workshop in an event, and I asked the grantees, how many of you talk about marriage and family as a goal for your kids?
Mm-hmm.
And even though it was listed in the grant as one of their outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't do it. And I said, why are you not doing it? Why are you not doing it? Why are you not talking about marriage as a aspirational goal?
Mm-hmm.
And people can choose not to be married. They're not going to be a failure if they're not married.
Right.
That's not the message that we want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's what they said. There's so many families that we work with in the schools that are not married. So many kids' parents are not married. We don't want to make them feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's a very good reason. However, let's turn this frown upside down. What if none of their parents went to college? Or none of their parents graduated from high school? Would we not talk about high school and college? And they kind of thought about it. Yeah, we would continue to talk. We don't want to make anybody feel bad. We want to give everybody the information. They will choose what they do. Nobody's going to be the marriage police.
Right.
But you need to inform your kiddos about what's out there, about the life script that makes life just a little easier. If you have a baby with this girl and baby with this girl and baby with this girl and baby with this girl, there's no morality in that. There's no
Mm-hmm.
judgment in that.
Mm-hmm.
It just becomes very complicated.
Difficult. Extremely.
It becomes way more hard, way more difficult.
Yeah.
Let's reduce the difficulty. Nobody's judging anybody.
Right.
People do what they do because their heart is where it is. There's
Mm-hmm.
woundedness, there's trauma, there's trying to fill a hole. There's all those. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to judge you. We just want to teach you. We don't
Right.
want to judge you.
Right. I asked in a class one time, I was talking to some kids and I said, what do you think is more difficult, having 5 children by 5 different mothers, or having 20 children by one mother? And like, they kept thinking about it. And they said, that's hard. That's hard. I said, it's really not. I said, just pick an answer. And they were like, it's just 5 kids. So you see me, I was like, 20 children by one person is easier every minute of the day, because at least you have some level of sanity and you have at least committed, right? And you are deep in the commitment, and you're gonna make sure that that commitment works out for you. It was a funny conversation to have, to hear them struggle between understanding that particular concept, understanding that, you know, this life script is meant to make life simple for you and not hard and stressful, and that they don't take into consideration what being outside of that sequence does for them. Joneen, tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Well, it's Joneen, Joneen, at NARME.org, NARME.org. And the website is www.narme.org. We'd love to have people check out the website, check out the conference, connect with me if they want relationship education in their schools or in their workplace. We just feel like if we can get this message out, we can improve happiness and human flourishing.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you this year at the conference. And thank you to all my I Am Dad podcast listeners. You know how I like to leave you. Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And that's my good friend and mentor, Art Mitchell, used to always say to me, Kenny, it's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice. Until next Sunday, take care and God bless.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad Podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am dad, period.
Yeah.